Martha Caldwell had lived in the Colorado wilderness for nearly 15 years. Her cabin was modest, hand-built, reinforced, and stocked with everything a self-sufficient woman needed. She had an old but well-kept rocking chair, a porch with a good view of the mountains, and a tea set that had seen more wars than the average soldier. The air smelled like pine and damp earth as she sipped her evening tea, watching the sunset bleed orange across the sky. It was peaceful. Quiet. Just how she liked it. Then the air changed. A low hum vibrated through the trees, unsettling the birds and sending them scattering into the sky. The cicadas stopped their singing. Martha placed her cup down with deliberate care, her grip tightening. That hum wasn't the wind. It was something else, something mechanical. She leaned back slightly, her sharp, weathered eyes scanning the sky. The clouds twisted unnaturally, parting as a sleek, black ship descended into the clearing beyond the tree line. It was angular, smooth, and wrong, technology that didn't belong to Earth. Martha exhaled slowly, tapping her fingers against the armrest of her chair. "Well," she muttered. "Ain't that something?" The ship hovered for a moment, engines hissing. Then, with a sharp hiss of pressurized air, a ramp extended from its belly. The metal gleamed under the fading sunlight as figures emerged, 7 of them, each standing over 7 feet tall. They were insected, their exoskeletons a dull mix of black and deep crimson. Mandibles clicked as they fanned out in formation, moving with trained precision. Their armor was sleek, layered in plates, and their weapons pulsed with a soft blue light. Martha tilted her head. They weren't here to sightsee. One of them stepped forward, slightly taller than the others. His deep-set, compound eyes glowed faintly as he lifted a device to his mandibles. When he spoke, his voice crackled through the translator, cold, mechanical, and brimming with arrogance. "Human," the voice said. "You are now property of the Gorthian Dominion. Do not resist." Martha raised an eyebrow. "That so?" The lead alien stiffened at her tone. He was expecting fear. Maybe begging. Not an old woman staring at him like he was an annoying salesman knocking on her door. "Comply," he ordered. "You will be processed for labor allocation." Martha's lips twitched. Labor allocation? At her age? These idiots really didn't do their homework. "You picked the wrong house," she said, slowly standing up. Her joints ached, but she ignored the discomfort. Another alien stepped forward, pointing his weapon at her. "Kneel." Martha sighed, adjusting her stance. Her cane, an old, sturdy thing, rested against the railing. Her fingers brushed over the handle. The aliens hadn't recognized it for what it was. That was their first mistake. "You know," she said, "back in my day, when someone wanted to take something that wasn't theirs, they at least had the decency to fight for it." She wrapped her fingers around the cane's handle. The lead alien's mandibles clicked in irritation. "You will obey." Martha gripped the cane tighter. "No." Then she moved. Faster than any of them expected, she twisted the cane's handle and pulled. A sharp whisper of steel filled the air as the hidden blades slid free. In one fluid motion she slashed, the old metal singing as it cut through flesh. The lead alien staggered back, clutching at his throat. Black ichor gushed between his claws as he gurgled in shock. The others froze. Martha didn't. She lunged forward, using the dying alien's collapsing body as cover. The second alien raised his weapon, but she was already too close. She drove the blade into the gap between his armor plates, twisting it cruelly. He screeched as she yanked it free, kicking him backward. The remaining 5 reacted, stepping into formation. One fired. Martha dropped low. A pulse of blue energy shot over her head, scorching the wooden beams of her porch. She moved fast, faster than a woman her age should have. Years of training, decades of war, had made her body efficient. There was no wasted movement, no hesitation. She darted behind a thick oak tree as more plasma bolts sizzled through the air. The bark splintered, but the cover held. One of the aliens barked orders in their native tongue. They were spreading out, flanking. Good. That meant they weren't retreating yet. she still had time. Martha reached down to her boot, pulling free a pistol, an old but reliable semi-automatic. A relic from her past life. She checked the magazine. Fully loaded. She took a breath, then peeked out from cover. One alien was creeping closer, weapon raised. Rookie mistake. Martha fired. The first shot hit his shoulder. The second went through his eye. He collapsed with a wet thud. Now they hesitated. Good. She shifted position, moving silently through the trees. The Gorthians had numbers and superior firepower, but they lacked experience in ground combat against a veteran of her caliber. They were used to conquering weak-willed species, not fighting a retired human general who had spent her youth leading Black Ops missions behind enemy lines. One of them turned at the last second, eyes widening. Martha shot him twice in the chest. 3 left. They were panicking now, barking orders. She could hear it in their voices, confusion, uncertainty. They had underestimated her. That was their second mistake. One of them tried to retreat toward the ship. She shot him in the back of the head. 2 left. The remaining aliens stood their ground, raising their weapons. Smart. Martha took a slow breath, calculating. 2 against 1, with plasma rifles. A direct approach would be suicide. She needed a distraction. Her eyes flickered to the porch. Her teapot was still there, the metal glinting in the dying light. A plan formed. She moved quickly, grabbing a nearby rock and hurling it toward the porch. It hit the teapot with a loud clang. The 2 aliens snapped toward the sound, weapons raised. Martha struck. She came in from the side, blade flashing. She sliced through the first alien's arm, forcing his rifle down. He screeched in pain. The second one turned, too slow. She fired her pistol point blank into his chest. The last alien staggered, clutching his wounded arm. His mandibles quivered. Martha stared at him. Her expression was calm. Cold. No witnesses, she murmured. The alien's mandibles opened, as if to plead. She pulled the trigger. Silence. Martha exhaled. Her heartbeat was steady. The air smelled like burning plasma and blood. She walked over to the bodies, nudging one with her foot. Dead. Good. She picked up a communicator from the lead alien's belt, examining it. With a few adjustments, she switched the frequency. A garbled voice crackled through. "This is General Caldwell," she said, her voice steady. "Tell the Gorthians they made a mistake." She dropped the communicator and crushed it under her boot. Then, with a sigh, she walked back to the porch, picked up her tea, and took a sip. It was lukewarm. She clicked her tongue. Damn aliens! She'd have to make another pot. The wind carried the scent of burnt ozone and alien ichor as Martha took one last sip of her ruined tea. She clicked her tongue in irritation, setting the cup down on the porch railing. 7 dead Gorthians lay scattered around her cabin, their once powerful forms reduced to corpses in the dirt. Their dropship, still idling in the clearing, cast an eerie glow across the carnage. The hum of its engines filled the silence left behind. Martha rolled her shoulders, her old joints popping. The adrenaline hadn't yet faded, but years of experience kept her pulse steady. This wasn't the first time she'd been outnumbered, outgunned, and underestimated. It probably wouldn't be the last. She glanced at the bodies, calculating. The Gorthians were arrogant, but they weren't idiots. This was a small team, likely a scouting party. That meant more were coming. Good. Let them come. Martha wiped her blade on the nearest alien's armor and slid it back into her cane. Then, she moved toward the ship. The ramp was still down, the interior dimly lit with the same cold, sterile glow that all alien warships seemed to favor. She stepped inside cautiously, her pistol raised. The ship was small, likely a personnel transport with a compact weapons bay. Crates lined the walls, bearing the Dominion's insignia. Martha recognized some of the markings. Supplies. Standard issue arms. Nothing too heavy. She opened a crate and smirked. Idiots brought explosives, she muttered, pulling out a palm-sized charge. C-74 tactical detonators. High yield, compact, and remote detonated. The kind of thing Earth's military had reverse engineered decades ago. The kind of thing she could use. She pocketed 3, planting another under the ship's control panel. If reinforcements came looking for their missing team, they wouldn't be leaving with answers. Martha turned, stepping back outside. The forest was still eerily quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. She didn't like it. Too still. Her gut twisted. Then she heard it. A distant hum. Faint, but growing. Martha looked up. 3 more ships. They broke through the cloud cover like hunting birds, their sleek black hulls cutting through the sky with surgical precision. Larger than the first, troop carriers, reinforced plating, heavy plasma turrets mounted beneath their bellies. Her lips thinned. They weren't underestimating her anymore. The lead ship sent out a pulse, a scanning sweep. They had detected the missing squad. The moment they realized what had happened, they'd deploy ground forces. She had minutes at best. Martha moved fast. She grabbed a spare rifle from one of the dead aliens, checking its charge. Nearly full. Heavy, but she could work with it. She sprinted to the treeline, her old combat boots crunching against the dry leaves. The high ground, she needed it. The ridge behind her cabin provided just that. She climbed with practiced ease, settling into position behind a fallen log. From here, she had a perfect line of sight on the landing zone. The ships descended. Hatches hissed open. More aliens spilled out, dozens of them. These ones weren't just scouts. They were shock troopers, their armor thicker, weapons heavier. Martha exhaled slowly. Time to make them regret coming here. She aimed the rifle. The first shot lanced through the head of the closest soldier, dropping him instantly. The second tore through another's knee, sending him sprawling. The camp erupted into chaos. The Gorthians shouted, ducking for cover, trying to pinpoint the attack. Plasma bolts seared the air in her direction, but Martha was already moving. She shifted positions, staying low, her mind calculating angles and movement patterns like she was back in command. They had numbers. She had tactics. A group broke off, trying to flank her. Predictable. She lobbed a grenade. The explosion sent bodies flying, a fireball consuming everything in its radius. Screeches of pain filled the air. She fired again, short, controlled bursts. Every shot counted. Every movement was efficient. The Gorthians were trained, but they weren't used to ground warfare against someone like her. Another wave advanced. They thought they had her pinned. She activated the detonator. The first ship exploded. The shockwave tore through the clearing, sending debris flying. The second ship, caught in the blast radius, took heavy damage. Its left thruster sputtered, failing. Panic. Martha smirked. One of the remaining aliens, an officer by the look of his insignia, shouted something in their guttural language. Retreat. They were breaking. She didn't let them. She advanced, gun blazing. They fired wildly, but fear made them sloppy. She dropped 3 more before the last few scrambled toward the damaged ship. Cowards. Martha watched them go, lowering her rifle. Smoke curled from the wreckage. Silence. Her heart was still steady. The years hadn't dulled her instincts. If anything, retirement had just made her restless. She turned, walking back to her cabin. The communicator from earlier was still lying in the dirt. She picked it up, switching the channel to the Dominion's fleet command. "This is General Martha Caldwell," she said, voice steady. "You lost today. And if you come again, you'll lose worse." Silence on the other end. Then, a single, rasping voice. "General?" She smiled. They knew her name. Good. She ended the transmission and crushed the device under her boot. She sighed, looking at the mess around her home. "Guess I'll have to clean up," she muttered. Then, shaking her head, she went inside to make a fresh pot of tea. The scent of scorched earth and burnt metal lingered in the crisp evening air. Martha Caldwell stood on her porch, sipping her freshly brewed tea, watching the remnants of the battle settle. Smoke curled lazily from the ruined Gorthian ships, their twisted husks dotting the clearing. The night was quiet now, too quiet. But she knew better than to believe it was over. Her warning had been sent. The Dominion had heard her name. And that meant they had a choice: walk away or come back with everything they had. She had a feeling they'd choose poorly. Martha set her tea down. Her body ached from the fight, but there was still work to do. She wasn't the type to wait for the enemy to make the next move. She was going to end this on her terms. The Dominion fleet arrived at dawn. 6 warships. Heavily armored, bristling with weaponry. They hung in the sky like storm clouds, blocking out the rising sun. Martha watched from the ridge, scanning their formation. Arrogant. Sloppy. They think this is intimidation. She adjusted her rifle's sights, taking her time. The enemy would deploy ground forces first, a full battalion. The ship's energy signatures told her something else. They had a command vessel with them. That was her target. Martha activated the detonator on the last charges she had placed around the battlefield. Explosions rocked the area, throwing the first wave of incoming soldiers into disarray. Then she moved. Old muscles protested, but her mind was sharp. She darted through the trees, flanking their landing zone before they could recover. She fought like a ghost, silent, efficient, merciless. One by one, she cut them down. They sent more. She burned through ammunition. When her rifle ran dry, she picked up an enemy weapon. She moved through the carnage like she had in wars past, never hesitating, never faltering. Her legend was written in the blood of those who underestimated her. And then, she saw him. The Dominion's field commander. Taller than the rest, clad in ornate armor. His eyes, dark and furious, locked onto her across the battlefield. Martha smirked. He bellowed a challenge, raising his blade. She responded with a single gunshot. The blast tore through his knee, dropping him instantly. The battlefield went still. The Dominion forces hesitated. Their leader groaned, clutching his ruined leg, his pride shattered. Martha walked toward him, stepping over the bodies of his soldiers. "I warned you," she said calmly. "You should have listened." He spat blood, glaring up at her. "You're just an old woman." She pressed her boot against his chest, forcing him down. "I'm the reason you'll never win." Then she fired the last round. The Dominion fleet, watching from above, hesitated. Their ground forces had been wiped out. Their commander was dead. Martha lifted the enemy communicator she had taken from one of the fallen soldiers. "This is General Caldwell," she said, her voice carrying over the open channel. "I've been retired for 20 years, and I still broke your best. Imagine what happens if I decide to come out of retirement." Silence. Then, the fleet turned away. She watched as the warships ascended, retreating into the upper atmosphere. They had learned their lesson. For now. Martha stood on her porch as the last echoes of battle faded. The war was over. Not because of weapons or ships, but because of fear. The Dominion would remember this day. She sipped her tea. It had gone cold. With a sigh, she went inside to make another pot. The galaxy would think twice before ever crossing her again.